muscle cramps are a neurological phenomenon, not a physiological phenomenon. What we did was we figured out a way to isolate and interrupt the nerve receptors, so that essentially the neural transmission that causes cramping, right? So a muscle cramp is effectively an attemptive corrective response to a logical trigger. Your brain's going, hey, something's going on there. It attempts to affect the massage from the inside out. And it's, as you know, when you engage one muscle, when you contract one muscle, you have to release the opposing muscle.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Filip Keuppens, Executive Vice President at the Pickle Juice Company. Filip, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Really happy to be here.
Oh, well, I appreciate you spending some time with us. I will try not to have a smile on my face every time I say the name of your company, but it's pretty difficult. So we'll try to be serious here this morning. Please tell us.
No. I mean, that's kind of what we do around here. Our director of sales, Blake, said it best. He says we try not to take ourselves too seriously, but we take our jobs very seriously.
Well, I tend to find that the funniest people I know are at their core the most serious people when push comes to shove. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and about the Pickle Juice Company.
Sure. In short, the Pickle Juice Company developed a product that is the only product in the world scientifically proven to stop and prevent muscle cramps. And everything we do with our flagship product, Pickle Juice, revolves around achieving just that. And it has nothing to do with pickles. Our product has nothing to do with pickle brine or anything like that. We sort of find ourselves suffering the same fate as Coke or Sharpie or Kleenex or any other of those endemic type brands that people often misconstrue for something else. So I guess it's flattering that we're that well known. It's challenging sometimes that we have to redirect awareness to some people who may not be fully in the know, but we've been very lucky to experience a ton of success, a ton of growth, and we're really, really proud of the fact that we've figured out a way to actually solve a problem, do it in a real acute fashion.
That's excellent. And what's the origin story of the Pickle Juice Company? When did they start?
Yeah, so it's kind of a two-part story. The brand has been around since 2001, but in 2015, it had a whole kind of rebirth, if you will. The formulation was changed, the go-to-market strategy was changed. The formulation led to consistent improved efficacy. And so the brand's been around since 2001, and it's been really the way it lives now, I suppose, has been around since 2015. That's really when our growth story took off.
Excellent. And tell us a little about your background. How did you end up being Executive Vice President at the Pickle Juice Company?
Sure. My background's kind of mixed. I'm originally from Belgium, but grew up in the DC area. I was educated in Western New York at Rochester Institute of Technology for undergrad and grad school. I was in the U.S. Army for a little while, and professionally, so I was an avid sort of obscure sport athlete, if that's a thing. I was a relatively competitive mogul skier. I was pretty active in rugby for about 30 years, actually, until recently. And so I had that connection to sports. I had that sort of awareness of food science because of my education at RIT. And then I went to really big companies. I started with Heinz and then with Warner Brothers and 20th Century Fox. And that was more in the sales and marketing capacity. So then the bottom fell out of the home entertainment industry, right? I was selling DVDs and Blu-rays. So when that stopped being a thing, I had to figure out what I was going to do. I was consulting and met these guys and really fell in love with the idea, fell in love with the concept. And I joined that partnership then. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Excellent. At this point, is this exclusively direct to consumer? Is there any other verticals you're servicing?
Direct to consumer represents about 20% of our sales.
Oh, that's it.
And that's if you include Amazon, actually. So most of our distribution is traditional CPG. So most of our sales are through brick and mortar. If you look at our sales model and you look at purely direct to consumer, like our website, without an intermediary like Amazon, even, it's low single digits. We pursue a traditional CPG model. We have about 15,000 retail outlets in the US selling our product right now.
And not to be too obvious, but what are the most common problems you're solving for your clients with pickle juice?
We solve one problem. We solve one problem better than anybody else in the world, and that's stopping muscle cramps. And we do it acutely. Within 82 seconds of ingestion, that cramp is completely gone. We can make that claim. It's on our bottle. We've defended it. We've supported it. We've proven it time and time again. And we're pretty focused on staying in that lane. A lot of people tell us that, yeah, anecdotal stories about, oh, I use it for this, it works for that, and the other thing, but we won't overtly go to market with anything we can't prove.
Understood. Now, you just said 82 seconds to solve muscle cramps. I mean, that's as a 55-year-old who can wake up with a calf cramp and have no idea what to do other than scream. That's sort of that's an impressive statistic right there.
Yeah, we've taken a completely different approach to functional consumer goods. So in 2010, a research team led by Dr. Kevin Miller out of BYU discovered that muscle cramps are a neurological phenomenon, not a physiological phenomenon. What we did was we figured out a way to isolate and interrupt the nerve receptors, so that essentially the neural transmission that causes cramping, right? So a muscle cramp is effectively an attemptive corrective response to a logical trigger. Your brain's going, hey, something's going on there. It attempts to affect the massage from the inside out. And it's, as you know, when you engage one muscle, when you contract one muscle, you have to release the opposing muscle. And so if you picture that on a microbiological level, and you've got this like flexion extension signal going on at the muscular level, and then the release signal can't keep up with the engaged signal. So then you get this hyper engagement in the muscle, which we call a Charlie horse or cramp. So what we do is we overwhelm that neural signal with information, thus preventing the signal getting through. And that's why it only takes 82 seconds, because you're not relying on ingestion or things that other body absorption and things like that. It's literally a communication signal. We sever it, it resets that signal, and then we flood the area, the problem area, with electrolytes, thus drawing a lot of other nutrients to it to prevent it from coming back. So it's a 1-2 punch.
That's amazing. I typically ask what makes you stand out from your competition, but I think you've already been in the process of answering that. Other than the incredible efficacy you're talking about, what differentiates you in the marketplace?
Well, it's, I'll answer that by expressing, I guess, our biggest problem is consumer confusion, I suppose. Now that if you think about it, there's no such thing in the wild as pickle juice, right? Nobody's out there juicing pickles, right? And before our product existed, people weren't talking about the stuff in the jar as juice. They would refer to it correctly as brine. But now you see all these stories about pickle juice does this, and we've been very fortunate to have a lot of editorial coverage. As a matter of fact, we don't do any paid media. We rely entirely on editorial, and that's how we go to market in a very transparent and honest way, as let other people tell your story, right? So what you tell your friends is going to be a lot more trustworthy and reliable than what I tell a bunch of strangers, right? So with that, I think our biggest challenge is the person consuming brine thinking pickle juice doesn't work, if that makes sense, right? Because they're not getting that pickle juice experience. Now, we call it pickle juice because the acetic acid we use, which is a proprietary grain that many have tried to replicate and reverse engineer and failed, is what sort of makes it taste a little bit like brine, but not fully. And that's why we call it that. I figured we could, call it what it does or what it tastes like. And if I gave you a bottle of Cramp Stopper 9000, you'd probably think it's just another snake oil. And the reality is, if you're people aren't used to consuming something that tastes like this, so we feel it's part of the consumer experience. It softens it a little bit, so that's why we went with that. So I think the differentiation point and is a strength that is now a weakness, because we do one thing, but in the U.S. market, and I say U.S. only because this is the only space, well, North America, I should say, where like pickles are such a big thing and they're referred to as such. We don't have this issue overseas, where either there isn't a pickle culture or they're called gherkins, so we don't call it. It's not called gherkin juice. So
Cornichon juice. Yeah.
jus de
Doesn't have the
cornichon.
same-
We talked about that.
Yeah, it
Like
doesn't have the
our
same
French
ring to it.
our French
Yeah.
product would be jus de cornichon.
Well, hey, my wife has always said that her grandmother touted the medicinal properties of pickle juice. So it
Right.
turns out she kind of knew something. But let's talk about the last couple of years. It's been a challenging time for a lot of businesses in COVID. Challenges, opportunities. How has it been sustaining and growing your business in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think one of the benefits small businesses, air quotes, have is that you're able to adjust and react very quickly. And what we do is when COVID hit, we created this rule of three because we're in a hyper growth environment. So we knew that the shelf space we had was recently acquired, which means it's relatively fragile. Like I said earlier, we don't do any paid media. We don't do any paid anything. Everything's organic, and that's important to our message. So we literally and figuratively, we don't use any artificial stuff in it. But so we knew it was really important to make those deliveries, not short anything. So we created this rule of three during COVID, where we had 3 months supply of raw materials, 3 months supply of finished goods, and at least 3 vendors to supply every single thing we needed. We also had this shift methodology where people were alternating coming in and out, so that if one group, God forbid, got sick, the other group could continue working. We had these stations set up. Nobody was within 10 feet of each other. And during the entire time, during all of COVID, only one person had to was found positive. I mean, we tested every single day. We did, like everybody, thermometers when you come in, no non-essential people. So we got through COVID pretty well. And I think before COVID hit, we were forecasting 40% growth, and even with the COVID distractions, if that's the right way to phrase it, we still achieved 28% growth. So a 12% hit without going in the negative, and more importantly, without having to make anybody unemployed. And we were really, really proud of the fact that everybody here was able to keep their jobs. Our company was able to keep the lights on. Because at the end of the day, we have a responsibility as an organization to the people that work for us. They have families. They have responsibilities. Everybody says it's just business. And I think people who say it's just business are people who are trying to justify making bad decisions. So, and then the bigger challenge, I think, in the industry was the year after COVID. There was a massive supply chain crisis, but fortunately, we had this rule of three in place that carried over into the supply chain that allowed us to continue to grow and have success without as skipping a beat. I think the biggest thing we faced was internal. We had built a facility in 2015. And immediately outgrew it. So we were building a new facility that we're in now. We had a catastrophic failure with our equipment that accelerated that timeline. And we kind of we're trying to install the facility and the lines while bringing it up to speed. And, I think our director of operations, Paul, is a magician as much as a mechanic to be able to do both of those things. So we got through it. And we worked in a construction trailer for about 6 months. So improvise and overcome, I guess.
Nicely done. No, I hear you loud and clear in terms of your responsibilities, that they're human beings at every level of your company. There are companies where it just comes down to numbers on a spreadsheet. People seem to forget that those are human beings, all those numbers, and your decisions have a huge impact in terms of rippling their pool. So
Yeah, and then part of it too, it's part of a philosophical approach, is that um, you motivate people rather than manage, rather than transacting with people, right? So, and I think this goes back to when I was in the military, when I was playing sports and whatever. You're you're not, as a soldier, fighting for a paycheck, right? And then obviously there's some level of patriotism and pride and idealism and stuff that goes into that. But fundamentally, when you're in the moment, you're fighting and you're doing things that most people wouldn't consider possible for an average person, but they are. But you're doing it for your buddy, for that person next to you. And I think if we humanize organizations and realize that we are all sailing in the same direction, um, and that we do, and rising tides do raise ships. But if that's not just lip service, and we do create an environment where people share the entrepreneurial spirit that the leaders of the organization share, and they see the benefits of that and they take pride in that, I think they're going to be happier, and frankly, happy employees are good employees, right? They're going to be loyal, they're going to be dedicated. I mean, there's been how many human resource studies indicating that people don't leave jobs over pay, people don't leave jobs over this and that, but companies don't adjust to the needs of their employees. And at the end of the day, aren't your employees just customers as well? So yeah, we definitely have a roll up your sleeves, everybody's in this together approach, and we're proud of that. I mean, I think our culture is very good, which also makes it very fragile, right? It only takes one person to take advantage and screw that up. So we're pretty protective of making sure that everybody's personally accountable and takes pride in what they're doing. And because if somebody comes in and isn't really pulling their weight, that gets called out, not by leadership. Usually it's by their peers, which is kind of a fascinating byproduct of that.
Nicely done. Let's switch gears for a second. You mentioned that most of your messaging is actually coming from your customers and their experiences to generate, that level of authenticity, but it's still content. What role has content played in the growth of the Pickle Juice Company?
Content's critical. It's because and just because we're sourcing it a different way and our message is different doesn't mean it's not important to us. As a matter of fact, we have a very robust brand ambassador network. So we rely on, I guess, curated user-generated content. Is that a way to describe that? Where we're not controlling the narrative, we're not controlling the access. Frankly, some of the best content I've seen come out is somebody that says, I hate the way this tastes, but I use it because it works. And people are like, doesn't that frustrate you? I said, absolutely not, because it's so authentic. It's true. And at the end of the day, we're sort of unapologetic about the flavor. We didn't create a flavor. We created a function. So if somebody doesn't like the flavor, as long as they'll tolerate it, that's fine, right? And I think those kind of messages, that's real human beings receiving it. So our big brand ambassador network, we incentivize them, not financially, of course, but we encourage them and to share their stories, share their experiences, and we hope that people find those experiences. We could probably do a better job curating those. Because it's very sort of, let's see what comes to us, and we have to accept our scale at this point. I think we're getting to the point where we need to start sort of seeking out as companies get bigger, despite the fact that we're like a large company with a small workforce, people perceive you to be less accessible, right? They're like, oh, this is some brand that lives in the like ethos in the stratosphere. But that hasn't changed, but it makes it more challenging to connect on a personal level with your consumers, because the reality is you're not out there in the trenches as much. It just can't be. So getting that content is critical, and it's ever evolving.
Well, it's a unique approach. It certainly is. I haven't encountered anybody who has that kind of all user driven content like you guys do, but that's certainly a level of authenticity you can't argue with. I mean, it's impactful for somebody to tell you that the product is so effective, I don't care what it tastes like, I'm going to take it anyway, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's not just like consumers, right? It's also we do have a PR budget. I mean, we're trying to get people to tell our story, right? And a lot of that content at the grassroots level is users, athletes, people who get nighttime cramps, whatever, sharing their short stories on social media. But it's also editorial coverage, right? That's still really, really important. I mean, we had GQ did an article on one of our brand ambassadors, which is sort of the perfect example of what we hope our model is, right? We help through collaboration with one of our brand ambassadors who thinks we're great, and then somebody likes our story, and then next thing you know, this brand ambassador is on the cover of GQ through a conversation that we had with GQ. That story is actually really funny, because they contacted us and they're like, hey, your company is really interesting. We'd like to do a story on you. Could we speak to some of your brand ambassadors? And I introduced them to a few brand ambassadors, one of whom was Patrick Sweeney, who, if you knew anything about Patrick Sweeney, you would know and understand why the story did what it did. Patrick's an incredible human being. He's an ultra runner, but he's just just a fascinating and a good person. So as soon as they talked to Patrick, to no surprise, the story became about Patrick, and then it shifted. But that's cool, right? Because that's really what our collaboration is, and we got our mentions in there. We're fine, and credit was given, so it's great. But that's really how we see the future. And I think it was the president of Intuit a few years ago that said, companies are no longer what they tell people they are. Companies are now what people tell other people that they are. We're really embracing that.
No, I like that quote a lot, and frankly, that's where we are with social media the way it is. Things move like wildfire when somebody has something to say about your business. So that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Right.
What's the old saying? Like, if you go to a restaurant and you have a bad experience, you're 10 times more likely to share it than you have an exceptionally good experience. So, and that's the other thing, I guess, that ties into this, is that be who you say you are, because people are going to find out, right? And it's still baffling to me that you still see these big, huge global companies try to mask stuff that, I mean, people are going to find out, folks. Like the whole Volkswagen thing, right? A few years ago, like, I cannot believe how their PR department handled that. It was like they were stuck in the 50s, thinking nobody had access to real information,
Hey, there
and
are
willing to
some
show that they're
gentlemen in
unethical.
prison. There's some gentlemen in prison for a long time over that. I owned a Volkswagen TDI at the time. Not only that, I probably sold a dozen cars for that company at the time, because I'm the gearhead of my family and friends, and it was an exceptional vehicle. Minor detail, it wasn't running its emission systems while you were driving.
Right.
But no, that I still don't understand anyone trying to pretend to be what they're not in this day and age. It's all definable. I mean, we have politicians who behave the way they do when there's videos of them showing you who they really are, right? So, no,
Right.
I hear where you're coming from. I don't get it. Authenticity speaks volumes. I think it is the only pathway towards actual success, right? Or at least it should be, one would hope.
Yeah, and I think those of us who are, Gen X or older, need to realize that this is not our world anymore. This world belongs to hyper transparency and positive ethics, and we're it's not about spreadsheets and bottom lines. It's about, what are you doing for society, and your success is a result of doing the thing that you should be doing. You can't, if your objective is to get rich and figure out a way to get rich, you're going to fail in today's environment, I believe.
Well, here, I still think that you put the almighty dollar first and a lot of other things suffer on the pathway there. It just does, it's not, that linear path is gone. Absolutely.
And it should be, frankly.
Yeah, no, hey, I prefer this sort of model. Look down the road a year. What are some things you'd like to be celebrating personally and professionally?
Oh, I think, when you're running an organization, I think they're very much intertwined. I mean, look, what I seek for this company is for it to be sustainable, for it to continue to grow, and be a place where people enjoy being part of that journey. So, we're looking at some more further international expansion. We're looking at internally broadening our offerings. We're looking at getting into co-packing. We just released our first new line extension, the chili lime pickle juice, which is going over really well. There's a few other things I'm concocting in the lab that are aimed at achieving different physiological benefits. One product is aimed at increasing the oxygenation level of red blood cells, and in preliminary testing, we've seen VO2 max increases of a couple of percentage points. That's really exciting. We're also taking a vasodilation approach to recovery, so we're playing around with that. So, I think our goal here is to be on the forefront. A really, really exciting initiative that we're going to kick off in January is the fact that we're going to go to 100% recycled materials. So because the pH level of our product is so low, we're very, very limited on which vessels we can use to contain it. Unfortunately, because our product is often used during sports and it's jostling around in your pocket or your bike jersey or in your gym bag, glass is not a realistic option for us. That sort of leaves us with PET, and so plastic. So what we figured out how to make a carbon neutral plastic is to use 100% recycled plastic. So while we try to find an eco-friendly solution, and while the technology for more eco-friendly solutions continues to evolve, we figured out a way to at least not contribute anything to the carbon footprint by using 100% recycled plastic to make our bottles from. So we're really excited about that initiative. We recently do 100% organic across our entire facility. There was one product left that contained an artificial ingredient, which we've figured out how to replace with organic. So, in the spirit of be who you say you are, we invite people to check us. And my goal is to say, when people become conscious of things that you should be doing, I want to be able to honestly say, yeah, we started that a year ago. So we really want to be on the forefront. And I don't think you have to be one of the big guys to be you don't have to be a huge company to be a pioneer. You just have to get people to buy into your vision and mission, and then we'll support it.
Excellent. I love it. Please tell us your URL. Where can people find the Pickle Juice Company, and what social media outlets are you using these days as well?
You can find us at picklepower.com, which is even more smile inducing than our name. And we are on most platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We interact a lot on Facebook because that's where you'll see a lot of the stories coming from our Team Green members, which is our brand ambassador network. And we have a really fantastic marketing experiential type team that's getting us to be a lot better at Instagram than when I was trying to do it.
Filip Keuppens of the Pickle Juice Company, thank you so much for spending some time with us on Business Ninjas today. Continued success and all the best to you and yours.
Thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure.